There she is. Where? Right here, the wagon.
Dad, this is not the car you ordered.
Take it easy, Rusty. Ed, this is not the car I ordered. I distinctly ordered the Antarctic Blue Super Sports Wagon with the CB and the optional Rally Fun Pack.
You didn't order the metallic P?
Metallic P? No, Antarctic Blue. The sports wagon. This isn't even the right model.
You know, I think you're right. I don't think this is the car. This is the new Wagon Queen family truckster. This is a damn fine automobile, if you want my honest opinion. Beats the hell out of the sports wagon, but I want to make you happy, huh? Davenport! I'll get to the bottom of this.
Yes, Mr. Ed.
Mr. Griswold ordered a blue sports wagon. Where is it?
I don't know, sir.
I know what must have happened. It didn't come in.
Ed, I'm not your ordinary everyday fool, okay? Now, I'd like my Antarctic Blue Super Sports Wagon right now, and if you can't get it for me, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. Where's my old car?
I'm just as upset as you are, believe me. Davenport! Get Mr. Griswold's car back and bring it back here! I can get you the wagon. There's no problem there. The problem is it might take 6 weeks. Now, I owe it to myself to tell you, Mr. Griswold, that if you're thinking of taking the tribe cross-country, this is the automobile you should be using, the Wagon Queen family truckster. You think you hate it now, but wait till you drive it.
I don't want to drive it. I just want my old car back, okay? I'm not falling for this bit. No way. Let's go, Russ.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
It is officially summer now.
It is, indeed.
We're both on our respective coasts, hiding out in the dark in the middle of the day with our air conditioning.
They actually have the UVA warning. It's so bright today, and because it's in the city, it just kind of... Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, it's quite a bright day here, too. I actually thought... I briefly considered going to the beach this morning, but I had that same thought about the sun, because it's quite dangerous when it's like this. So
Yes.
I was like, or I could sit in the dark and sip ice water.
Exactly.
And listen to the audio version of today's story, which I'll get to in a little bit. But if you are new, maybe you didn't know that this movie was based on a short story. We did not know. It's a thing we just learned. But yes, this is a podcast where we read movies that have been adapted from books, usually. But once the pandemic started, we thought, for our own mental well-being, we thought it would be fun to connect every single week and do a brand new episode every single week. And that means we can't really do, War and Peace every week or Moby Dick. We have to choose shorter literary sources. And so for this weird time that we're all in right now, we've expanded what we mean by the term book to mean, like I said, any literary source. It could be a short story like we're talking about today. It could be a magazine article. It could be a play. It could be a poem. It could be a song. It could be a postcard. We even did one that was a postcard once. If you have suggestions for movies that have been adapted from a literary source, we really want to hear them. So there's a few places where you can make those suggestions. You can meet us. You can interact with other listeners of this podcast on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page, so be sure to like that. We also have a private Facebook group, and you do have to ask to join, but we literally talk about, I know people overuse that, but really people just go in there to talk about books and movies. That's what we're all about. So we're always looking for suggestions. The book needs to be, or the literary source needs to be something we can get our hands on pretty easily. Today's story is available online anywhere. Also, there's a YouTube of a teacher reading it, which is, I think, really cool. I can't wait to hear it myself. And the movie has to be on a major streaming service. This is on HBO Max right now, but it's also, you can rent it anywhere. Anyway, we have a private Facebook group, Book vs. Movie Podcast group. We're on Twitter and Instagram, Book versus a Movie, spelled it all out. And we also have an old-timey email. It's Book versus Movie Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers or magnets, we'd be happy to send them to you.
You know what I found the other day? I was cleaning out a drawer. and in the back of the drawer, I found a giant stack of book versus movie bookmarks. So we have those too.
Oh, yay.
I forgot about the bookmarks. I was like, yeah, what is in the back of this drawer? It was a giant stack of bookmarks. So we have those as well. And we would love to send them to you, as Margot said. And if you really, really enjoy the show and you would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
We are putting all of our episodes. We've been together for 8 years doing this show. So everything from 2020 and then previous to that is going up on our Patreon wall. And I want to thank Lois, Emily, and Beth for joining. We recently put up our episode for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. We love our James Bond, The Color Purple, Manchurian Candidate. All these really great books and movies are up there. We have a couple of very affordable options. So thank you all so much for doing that.
Thank you very much. We are so excited to talk about today's book and movie. I saw this when it came out in the movie theater. I was 10.
Yeah.
Which was a little young. I remember there were a lot of jokes I didn't get. But I have a super vivid memory of seeing this. Did you see this in the theater when it came out?
Yes, my parents took us, and it's the same time I think like Poltergeist came out. There's like a bunch of stuff
correct.
that we
Yeah.
went as a family, and this was one of those movies. And I remember my parents later saying, like, yeah, we were really, really sweating that one because we didn't really pay attention to the R rating. This is an 82 R for y'all.
Yeah, which, is a 2022 NC-17, I think.
PG-13.
PG-13, and we'll talk about that. So
Yeah.
speaking of PG-13, so we watched this as a family last night. My kids had never seen it. And it was really funny because the kids and I, Todd was busy doing something. And so the kids and I started watching it, and we got about 20 minutes in. And my children, just like I did when I was the first, seeing it for the first time, but them even more so, they missed most of the comedy because they had so many questions about the car. What kind of car is that? Who would drive something like that? And then not the truckster, the car they traded in. The station wagon, the regular car.
Yeah.
Right. And they had questions about the computer and questions about the Atari. Is that a real Atari? Because my son's like way into video games. Just questions about all manner of things that they missed so many of the jokes. And so when Todd joined us, we went back to the beginning and we watched it again as a family. It was so much fun. We had such a blast watching this movie together. Todd and I, of course, remembering it from when we were kids, our kids seeing it for the first time. It is hilarious. But as we just said at the top of the show, it's based on a short story. So let's talk about the origins. It's a very unusual origins of this movie.
We have National Lampoon, which is we've never talked about before, and I don't know how this has happened. And
I know, I'm kind of baffled by that, but
Also,
we never have.
Because National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, for all you that are big fans of that, Margot was married to a man named Todd. So if you're
the snobby next door neighbors.
Exactly. So it's very funny. National Lampoon was a magazine that came out literally 1970. I'll stop saying literally. And it was part of Harvard. They had a parody magazine, and it's 1970, so it's right in the middle of the Vietnam War. Nixon is president. There have been all these protests in the 60s, and this magazine comes out, and it's filled with, I guess at the time would be called radicals. It's people that left-leaning. They just were not...
Yeah.
Squares.
It's sort of like, it's like The Onion today, if you guys
Right.
are familiar with The Onion. It's The Onion, but strictly for the Ivy Leaguers.
There's a movie that came out, and it's a documentary called Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant, Dead. It's about National Lampoon. It's about these movies, the origin of these movies. And it's this third time I've watched it, and I had to text you because I was like, I'm getting something totally different from this than the first time I even watched this a few years ago. And that is that National Lampoon, especially in the 70s, right into the 80s, really had the lock on humor, along with Saturday Night Live. As far as what was popular.
Definitely. That was American comedy for many years. Yeah.
That was it. That was the standard. It was considered rebellious. It was considered edgy. And it was for the time. It's also the whitest thing ever. These are not, it's founded by guys, very funny, smart people, but they're not even, on top of that, they're super rich. They all come from these
they are extremely
backgrounds.
privileged. Yes.
Harold Ramis, Chevy Chase. There's also the London crew that then went on to make This Is Spinal Tap. So we have Christopher Guest. He comes from it's a very, and then it occurred to me that Caddyshack takes place at a country club. Sure, it's half of it's the staff and half of it's the squares, and you're supposed to make fun of the rich people, but still, it's this.
But still, yeah, most people watching,
air.
most people watching Caddyshack are not going to be like, oh, that's just like my country club.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. And I'm not saying anything's wrong. It's just this was the humor at the time. This was the forebearer of all of this. And these magazines, there's a famous one. I'm looking at it now. There's a picture of a dog with a gun to the head, and that basically said, "We're going to, subscribe to this magazine, and we'll shoot this dog." It had a lot of. My brother Joe went from Mad Magazine to National Lampoon. It had boobs, lots and lots of nudity. That was a part of it as well. The 1970s, this is a magazine that's edgy and funny. John Hughes, if you all know who John Hughes is, this is one of his first short stories. He was living in the Chicago area. He was an adman, a copywriter, and wanted to write scripts. And for someone, this is our generation. This man is huge over our teen years for sure. Wrote a story. It's called Vacation 58. And he was basically in the middle of winter in Chicago. They had a snowstorm, and he remembered these family vacations he took as a kid. And I don't know if you ever did this. In my family, get in the station wagon, get out of the house at 5 a.m, latest, and go driving.
No, we used to just, I grew up in Southern California. We used to just drive up and down from Oxnard, and that's what we did. But we drove to Disneyland, but for us, that was a hour 10. It was not that long a drive.
I grew up on the East Coast. It's you have your bit of summer and fall, and then it gets cold again. And so when we have nice weather, we kind of, and especially at the time, you just piled up in a car and you drove someplace. It was the car culture too, left over from the 1950s into our young John Hughes's generation. And it's about, he's basically putting himself as center. He was 8 years old, and his family drives to California to go to Disneyland. That's the whole story. And the story is very funny. It also has,
It's hilarious.
It really is.
It's really well written. It's very funny right from the get-go. It grabs you. Oh, shoot, I should have had it in front of me. So just to give you an idea of how entertaining, and I can see why somebody immediately thought of making this into a movie, as impossible as it sounds when you go through the whole story. This is the opening line. If Dad hadn't shot Walt Disney in the leg, it would have been our best vacation ever. How's that for a journal prompt?
And they're in their car. And if this was my child, we'd get in the car and for 6, 7, 8 hours up to Maine, down to Virginia, fighting. There's 4 of us kids fighting and playing the music and all that stuff that goes along with it. There's some racially insensitive stuff because there's Native Americans.
There's a few things as they, There's some tropes that are unfortunate.
Right. But it's the time. That's just what people, like I said, edgy humor, whatever they thought that was. And so John Hughes, by the way, he becomes one of the most successful screenwriters, directors of the 80s and 90s. He was nobody. He just was a random ad guy, and he came up with this story. So they only gave him a couple of $1,000, and then it was sold.
It worked out, though, I think.
Oh, yeah.
we can say.
I'm looking at this list. It's he got Mr. Mom, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club.
So many things.
Home Alone. Just that.
Home Alone.
The money
Seriously.
he must have made from that.
I can't even imagine.
He did this. He was born 1950. A boomer for sure. And then when he was 44 in 1994, he just stopped. And people didn't even realize it for a couple of years. Because we were used to this. He was always producing something.
There would be some coming out every year. Yeah.
All the time. And Molly Ringwald was his big muse for a while there. There was just all these stories about him. This was another thing. He was the teenage expert. This middle-aged white guy from the Midwest, decided this is, and once again, it's a very white, it's very upper middle class kind of point of view, which also makes me really appreciate this story because these are just middle class people.
Yes, in the story now, in the movie that's a slightly different scenario, but in the story, I forget what the father does for a living. But they're planning this trip to Disneyland. So a few key differences. Of course, it's set in 1958, not in 1982, 83. But the family unit is basically the same. You have Clark and Ellen, or I think that, and Rusty is the son, and everything's being told from his point of view. You have the sister, the whole thing about picking up the aunt, the Kansas cousins, all of that is the same. One key difference is that the dad in the story, the dad wants to fly to California. He's like, I don't want to drive you people to California. Why? Like, who's going to do the driving? I am. Why would I do that? And it's the mother who is insisting on doing this on the road and wanting to stop at every like bush and tree for sightseeing along the way. And so the parents are constantly bickering because she wants to stop. And it turns out that the mom has this kind of ulterior motive, which is one, to stop in Kansas at a cousin's house to pick up her aunt, who nobody likes, and deliver her to her other cousins, the aunt's son's home in Arizona. So Arizona from Michigan is not a short drive. So that's really why she wants to go by car. It's not the sightseeing. It's that she's agreed to. And now I actually had this happen. Now I had totally forgotten about this, and we didn't talk about it last night as a family, but when Todd and I got engaged, so we were talking about Harvard. So he had just graduated from Harvard, and I had just graduated from Boston University. And he was planning this big trip. He's from the Pacific Northwest. I'm from Southern California. And he wanted to show me the Oregon coast where he used to go as a kid. And so we planned this trip. We flew up to Washington State, saw the in-laws or future in-laws, and they were helping us map how to drive to this place on the Oregon coast. And it was very much like in the movie. They were like, "Oh, did you tell them the good news yet?" And we're like, "What?" And as it turns out, so his grandparents were very generously loaning us. They had a timeshare on the coast, so they were loaning us their timeshare for this trip. Turns out the timeshare came with a tiny little string, which was on the way back. Can you route through this kind of remote part of Oregon, pick up his grandmother's brother, and bring him back to Spokane? And I was like, what? I don't even know this guy. I don't even know you people. Like, why are we doing this? But as it turned out, unlike in the movie, this man was absolutely delightful. And it is such a happy memory. We frequently, if we're on the road, we remember this trip that we took with his uncle. And he was darling. He was the opposite of the woman in the story. But I have been in that situation where, like, yeah, have you told them? Because we need this thing. We need you to do this thing for us, and you can't back out of it. So, so they go and they pick up the aunt. I mean, and I forgot. I didn't know because I hadn't read the story before, but I really assumed reading the story. This is one of the rare instances where you and I have seen the movie before we read the literary source, right? Mm-hmm. I had assumed that a lot of the jokes and a lot of the humor, because I knew it had been rewritten from the original story, I assumed that a lot of that was added in, that was like a Chevy Chase, Harold Ramis influence on the movie. But really, all of the jokes are in the original story. You know, all of the craziest stuff in the movie is in the original story. Like that, which I think is really cool. Like they weren't trying to one up the story in terms of weirdness and kookiness, grossness. Right. They're just updating it. And so I thought that was really cool because I had also heard about like some bad feelings about them rewriting John's story. But they really just kind of updated it. And
he did fine.
They didn't change it that much. He was fine.
He was fine. I mean, it's sad to say because he died at 59. I'm always kind of like,
I know, it's mind-boggling, and just suddenly,
just very suddenly had a heart attack here in New York. He was visiting his son, but so that's the story. I mean, and like I said, there's a couple of things that you wouldn't write nowadays, but it's the idea being like this, and also there was sort of this fetishizing of the 50s that happened in the 70s and 80s.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
They're sort of looking back at that, like, weren't those good days? Weren't those happy days? I'm like, not for everyone, but okay, whatever you want to say. This gets picked up National Lampoon's is shopping it to all of these studios, and then it gets picked up by Warner Brothers. And Chevy Chase was a big star on Saturday Night Live, and he had done.
Yeah, he was.
And I forget
Yeah.
how cute he was. He really was handsome.
There are mixed stories about Chevy
yeah.
Chase, but you have to hand it to him. I mean, he did deliver the goods.
He's funny as hell.
He's funny.
He's very, very funny. And Harold Ramis is the director of this story. Should we play the trailer and then talk about this movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
This summer, when you think vacation, think National Lampoon's Vacation. See the real America.
Hey, underpants. Hey, yellow.
It's friendly.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Don't you want to look at the Grand Canyon?
It's educational.
Great.
And most of all, it's fun.
The dog went on the picnic basket.
Let Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Imogene Coca, Randy Quaid, John Candy, and Christy Brinkley
Well, are you gonna go for it?
This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
take you for a ride. This summer, when you think vacation, think National Lampoon's Vacation.
Better check under the hood.
I don't know about you. I saw this documentary, and it was about the making of the movie, and it's from
Yeah.
Biography Channel. And
Yes, I saw it too.
yeah, it's
Super good.
Oh.
So interesting. Much more than I thought it would be. I was like, oh, I'll just have it on in the background. But it was actually very, very interesting.
jam-packed with information, stuff I'd never heard of before. Chevy Chase was a huge deal, and then he became a movie star. This is before Fletch, but this is after like
Yes.
the Goldie Hawn movies that he did.
Right. Yeah.
That's where he is in his career. And there was a script by John Hughes. It was his first script. He never, it was his first screenplay.
Yeah.
So
it's not unusual that they would rework it.
yeah. And National Lampoon, we should say, they did have Animal House that came out late 70s, like 78, 79. Huge, huge hit.
But then they'd had like a couple of flops after
Kind of
that,
couple
right?
of flops. Also, Caddyshack, which I don't know like where it is exactly here, but that was one like it didn't do as well as they thought. It's now considered
Yes.
a classic.
Yes, but when it first came out, it wasn't like a massive like Vacation was an instant. People
Smash.
just loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where they are with this. So the brand is kind of getting older, and it's now the 80s, and it's like this whole new generation of people. We have Chevy Chase. We have Beverly D'Angelo as she's
So perfect.
and she's only like 28 or 29, and she's playing the mother of teenagers. They are so great together. I can see why they're always in these movies, because they're the couple to me. Like they
Yeah.
totally,
And it was sweet that she says that, that they've continued to have like a really nice relationship.
right.
So yeah, you really get that. They have, and I think that's really what keeps the vacation movies. I thought that there were 5 of them. Are there 5 of them?
Yeah, there's European Vacation after this.
Christmas.
And then there's Christmas. I think there's another Christmas one too. And there's a Vegas one, I think. There's been a few of them.
Anyway, what keeps them from being just like gag, jokes. What gives it really heart is the chemistry between those two, and that that it is a real relationship, and that you get the sense that they really care about each other, and that each of them takes the other one as they are, which I think is really comes across in a really cool way.
Chevy Chase said that Clark to him was just a guy that just wants the best for his family. and he figures like we just have this 2 weeks for vacation. I'm going to try to make it the best I possibly can because I work all the time and I don't spend enough time with my family, and that's what it is. And she adores him, but he's a lunatic, and so she just like, what can you do? I mean, Clark's Clark.
I love like you see her picking her battles,
right? Exactly.
With him all the time in all the movies. You know, there are all these moments where she's like, no, I'm just going to let this one go.
Right.
Or, or she's like, no, we really need to stop this right now. They are quite affluent. You know, he works a food additive developer, which I adore. That is a Harold Ramis choice, I'm sure. Brilliant. So he works a lot. They have an amazingly nice house. It has a circular driveway. The fact that they have to blow all this money right and left as the mishaps happen on the trip, it's not hurting them. It's not like, well, I guess we're not going to buy you school clothes this year. It never really injures them in any way. And it makes it for the audience, it makes us be able to laugh at their misfortune without worrying about them. You know, they're like, oh, these guys, they're fine. Look, they took your hubcaps.
Well, it starts with Eugene Levy. I mean, and everyone loves Eugene Levy, but as the car salesman.
Brilliant. Every second is genius.
You think they hate the car now? Wait till you start to drive it. They created the car as a character. The car
is hilarious.
It is hilarious.
My children kept asking me questions about the car. Did they really have 2 rows of lights like that on the station? Like, first I had to explain what a station wagon was because they'd never seen one, and that we had one. We had to explain how what do we call those bench seats? Mm-hmm. Remember bench seats that you basically had 2 sofas in your car. And you could just like sprawl out and nobody cared about seatbelts or anything. That this was baffling to them. So they were like, well, if they had those things, like they must have had like, why does it have gills on the side? Why does it, want all this stuff on the car is hilarious.
Clark, I think we're lost.
We're not lost. Ellen, will you please let me do the driving?
I honestly don't think you're going to find the Grand Canyon on this road.
Jesus, it's only the biggest goddamn hole in the world.
Clark, watch your language.
Make that the second biggest.
Dad, I haven't seen a car for an hour.
Oh, shut up, Audrey. You don't think Dad knows where he's going?
Thank you, Russ.
You're lost.
Ma, I saw some detour signs.
I didn't see any.
I saw them when you and Mom were trying to fold the map.
Audrey, when they close the road, they put up big signs, like this one. Ah!
I think I broke my nose. I stabbed my brain.
I just got my period.
I better check under the hood.
And that's the beginning. Like Clark, was going to get this blue car. This is going to be the sports car that they're going to drive, and that's going to be the fun. And he's immediately being ripped off by Eugene Levy. He's like, and he's calling for the coworker to come over. He goes, "Did his car show up yet?" No. He just walks away.
And another thing that gets established in that scene, which I love about this movie, and this one is not in all the movies. It's just, I would say, in this one. But it's something that's so strong that it carries through the culture of the rest of the movies, is this relationship between Russ and Clark.
Yeah, they're buds.
Russ, they're buds. And Russ sees Clark getting fleeced, but he's like, you're the adult. I'm not going to pipe up and be a jerk about it. I'm here. I got your back, man.
Right.
I'm sorry that you're getting fleeced with this car, but I'm here for you. I got you. And they just really, it's such a sweet relationship, those two.
Anthony Michael Hall, and that's his first time working with John Hughes. I mean, that's how he was this kid from New York with a single mom, and he became a superstar. I love that he says, like, I want my car back, and then he just crashed. This car is just squished. So many sight gags.
Like I said, I have so many memories of seeing this movie for the first time in the movie theater. It was a packed movie theater. I think it was in Rancho Bernardo because I was with my aunt and uncle. And I just remember people shrieking with laughter when they bring the flat, even, you know, because you're laughing at the truckster when you first see the truckster, because you have to remember, okay, for us seeing it the first time in the movie theater when it came out, when you see the truckster, there are cars in the parking lot of the movie theater that look like that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that far out. It looks like a spaceship now. You don't, like, there's no point of reference. But to us, that was a familiar kind of a car. What was the funnier thing in the live audience for the first time was when they brought out the flattened, whatever it was, a Pinto or a Buick. When they brought that out, I just remember the whole theater just like, you couldn't even hear the jokes. We were laughing so hard at the car.
And they get this car and they start to take off. And Clark, and I love it when they're singing together in the car. Like
it's adorable.
It really is. And it is like the siblings in the back seat fighting. Like that's kind of what you do. He's in my space. This is my seat. Like you can't touch me. And we'll go along with the story. There are things like they go to St. Louis and there's that whole scene in the.
Okay. So. First of all, I love the joke of like, this is St. Louis Arch, and he gives them all the facts. There's the elevator that goes right to the top.
Can we go now?
Great. Can we go? No.
We didn't pay for that. We're not going to go.
And they, to their credit, the filmmakers, the people involved with this project say that this section of the movie is the part they most regret. And there's a lot of like very dark humor, very edgy stuff going on in this movie. But this is what they said, like, if we had to do it over again, we wouldn't do it. Although, you know, in its defense, and I think this is a National Lampoon thing too, you know, again, as Margot mentioned, it's an elitist kind of a institution. But what I think is interesting about National Lampoon is that it knows that it's an elitist institution.
They know who they are.
Yeah, they're not making fun of the people in this neighborhood. They're making fun of the Griswolds. Right? So the Griswolds are really who we're laughing at. But it is... it's not how it's a lot of stereotypes. Not as many as there are in the short story, I will point out.
Right.
But that really goes a lot farther, but I appreciate that. You know, I mean, I don't appreciate the stereotypes, like you have a pimp and they're taking the hubcaps and all of that. But again, the joke is on you're punching up, because the joke is on the Griswolds. The joke is on, again, the fact that their hubcaps are being taken, the fact that they're being fleeced by this neighborhood. They're not really going to be seriously. They're going to be fine. And so we can laugh and laugh and laugh at them. And we want more bad stuff to happen to them, in fact. But yes, I you know, it's not how they would do it today. I had to explain the term honky to my children.
This is their first honky?
Yes. They're like, what? Why is that an insult? I don't understand. Yeah. And I don't think they ever really quite got it, although Todd and I were laughing every time it showed up on the scene. And that's another thing that, like, I remember in the movie theater, like the first time that flashes on the screen as he's oh my God, the scene where he's asleep at the wheel.
They're all asleep. They're just like I said,
I just remember
is a character. Like
the car is hilarious. People were shrieking and screaming in the movie theater. I mean, it was deafening. And it's really nice that there's no dialogue, because the audience is going so nuts. You cannot believe what you're saying. You cannot, like, you want to cover your eyes, but you have to peek. But yeah, I just remember the audience reaction. Like when I see that section every single time, I'm back in that theater.
Right.
And like, I cannot believe we're all just screaming. Ah! And it's such a beautiful stunt, like the whole thing, like when it goes up on the sidewalk and it just barely misses all these people and in
their homes, like just like,
oh my gosh,
it's
so
hilarious.
Funny.
On their way there, the reason why she wanted to drive was she did want to meet with her cousins, and they have their kids, and Clark has a history with him, and it's Randy Quaid, who's very problematic now, but.
Yeah, we don't know what happened to Randy Quaid,
no, he's
but
so funny.
He's very good. I mean, you have to, you got to hand it to him. He is delivering in these movies.
How do you like yours, Clark?
Oh, medium rare, a little pink inside.
Oh, you're buying. Light or dark?
Oh, either way, it doesn't matter. Vicky, can I help you with that Kool-Aid? Please?
I don't know why they call this stuff hamburger helper. It does just fine by itself, huh? I like it better than tuna helper myself. Don't you, Clark?
You're the gourmet around here, Ed.
And all of them. Like in all.
He offers him a beer.
He and Clark,
and then he
those
just gives him
two.
this
Oh
beer
my
he was
God.
drinking from, and then gets a new beer for himself.
So funny.
I crack up this whole time when he's making the hamburger helper on the grill without the burger. And Jane Krakowski is just like mixing.
Oh, okay, let's talk about Jane Krakowski in this movie. She's only in it for a second. She's barely in it, but she's amazing.
Well, so they're the country version, I guess, of Audrey and Rusty. They're meeting their cousins, and like the son introduces Rusty to masturbation and pornography, and the daughter introduces Audrey to weed and
which when you first see it, you're like, oh my gosh, these are like, this is so good. You know, and my kids are like, what? But then what you find out is like Russ, when the other cousin's like, yeah, the girly magazines, he's like, ew. And Audrey's like, ooh, weed. But she has no idea what to do with it or what it is. No. She knows like you hold it and look cool. And that's like all it is to her. She doesn't become like a burnout, you know, for the rest of the trip. It's really sweet.
She has joints in her purse just to have joints in her purse.
But Jane Krakowski. Okay, wait. Let's go back to Jane Krakowski.
Okay, there's a lot of like very blue humor, we would say, like just very dark, and it's inappropriate. I'm going to say this. I laughed hysterically.
Oh my gosh, we were laughing so hard. First of all, it is the side pony of the 80s. Right. It is the side pony for the gods. Jane Krakowski in this movie. Her delivery. She's so funny. She's so funny. She's a kid, and she's so freaking funny. And this is her gag. She came up with mixing the Kool-Aid with her hand.
And then just splashes it on the ground next to him.
So brilliant.
I mean, what is she, like 12? Younger?
Yeah.
I mean, and she goes on to huge career, 30 Rock and all those other things. But yeah, there's the whole joke about French kissing, which I'm sorry, I did laugh. It's wrong.
We all laughed. You laugh and you're like, whoa.
But it's hysterical. And then we have Imogen Kopka, who plays the grandma.
Oh my gosh.
And they said that she was in her 70s and she was a comedian. She was in a lot of
genius.
But they were worried, like, gosh, she seems kind of old and frail. And then they call her out in the film, and she just busts through the door with her walker.
They're like, action! She's like, pow! Here she comes. Like Willy Wonka, turning somersaults.
So many gags here. I mean, I just miss comedies, like it's just sight gags and jokes.
It is so many sight gags that are hilarious. Oh! One sight gag that I never noticed before. We noticed it watching this movie last night. The very beginning, where Clark and Ellen are in the kitchen, and she's like, I don't know, you know, maybe we should fly. And he's like, oh no, getting there is half the fun. You know, like, but maybe we should fly. She's like trying to like convince him very gently and lovingly that this is a terrible idea. While they're doing this, she's scraping the dinner plates. The dishwasher is open. She's scraping the dinner plates and handing them to Clark, who we're presuming is supposed to put them in the dishwasher. He dries them. Dirty. They're dirty. He dries them and puts them in the cabinet. They never get washed.
There's so many things like that.
Through this whole scene, she's scraping them, he's putting them away. She's scraping them, it is hilarious. There's all kinds of stuff like this in this whole movie.
And so now they're going to take the grandma to out west with them, and she's cantankerous, and she's a pain in the ass.
She's brilliant,
but she's so funny. And she brings her dog, who attacks Clark and attacks. That's the other, like, the joke is that the dog is on the back of the car,
which is in the short story. Okay, this is in the short story. This whole thing, it's almost verbatim out of the original story. The dialogue, even the whole thing, and which I thought for sure. I was like, dang, they really pushed the limit with. I didn't realize that it was in the source material. but in the source material, it's grosser, I will say.
Yeah.
It's much grosser, but it's so brilliant just to have the empty collar and the cop,
Peach.
the cop
James
who's like
Cage.
the cop just like, get out of the car, like, you maniac, you monster. And he's talking to him like he's the most disgusting human being he's ever laid eyes on, and he can't even like begin to think of what to do to this guy. So funny. And even the line about like, poor little pup, he probably kept up with you for a mile or so. That's in the short story.
Exactly. It's wacky.
It's so dark.
It's so dark. That's what makes it kind of funny, because they go for it. I kind of like appreciate the moxie that takes, and the chutzpah. They take the grandmother, and then there's another scene where he falls asleep and he's going in the air, and they're in Arizona, and the car is just flying.
Which is also in the story.
Right.
That happens in the story.
And they really made it happen. They got a stuntman who was able to go like a football field length
amazing
with that car, and the grandmother's with them. And then she passes away in the back seat, and they're all like that. They're knocking her off of them. She's sitting in the middle. And
again, all of this in the source material. This whole thing is in the original short story of the aunt dying in the back seat, them wrapping her up, leaving her in the rain on her son's porch with the note pinned to her. All of that is in the original. I mean,
it's great. It's really dark.
When we're driving and they've got it like she's as though she's wrapped up on the hood of the car with her little purse in her.
I just can't with this movie. And as we said in the story, they're going to Disneyland, and that's the whole thing. And it's a huge deal to go to Disney World, Disneyland. It's a very American thing. They don't. Is Disneyland closed when they get there?
Yes. So they just like we see. They get there. They're like, oh, the parking lot's empty. We got the place to ourselves. Awesome. And they go up, and there's a sign that says it's closed for cleaning and maintenance. And in the story, so in the story, what happens then is Clark snaps, stops at a sporting goods place, picks up a gun, goes to Walt Disney's home, barges in, shoots Walt Disney in the leg. And somehow he talks his way out of it. I can't remember exactly like what he says to Walt Disney, but he's able to talk himself out of it. And at the end of the story, the family is flying home on an airplane, as they should have done from the very beginning.
Right.
And that's the end of the story. So let's talk about the end of this movie.
So originally they filmed this. Oh, we forgot to mention also, I'm sorry, just very quickly, there's the Christy Brinkley of it all.
Yes, which we'll get to.
She's a superstar. And then so it's a big deal. They go, it's not Disneyland because they couldn't get the rights to it. So they called it Wally World, which is better anyway. It's better to have.
Which is brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant to call. And that he's Roy Wally, like Roy Disney. Awesome.
And the guy looks like Disney that picks the actor. Yeah. They go. So the story that they filmed originally is they go to the Wally World mansion for the owner, and they drag him out and they make him entertain them. And like he
at gunpoint, he like points the gun at him and is like, "Now you're going to dance because I came for entertainment and I'm going to be entertained and you're going to entertain my family." And that's the end of the movie.
And they previewed it for an audience. They did like 80% there, and then as soon as they get to Wallyland, they didn't like that. It was just
hated the ending of that movie.
It was just a bridge too far.
So let's talk about Christy Brinkley, because Christy Brinkley, so this is a total invention of the movie. So in the movie, we have the girl in the Ferrari who shows up. Is she real? We don't know. Is she just daydreaming as he's driving? He's seeing this hot girl in a Ferrari. Originally in the movie theater, when we saw this, when she pulls up, what's the song that's playing?
Oh, I don't remember.
I'm so excited.
Oh, yes.
Right? And I couldn't find anywhere where we get any kind of reason why it's not in. You can't find that version anywhere. They could change the song when it came out on video, and ever after, it's this other song by one of the Pointer Sisters. It's not I'm So Excited. And even in the credits, it says I'm So Excited by the Pointer Sisters. It's this other song called like Something About the Boy or something like that. Anyway. He sees her, and then there's the scene where they're in the motel, and you're like, oh, she's real. Like, they're actually interacting, and they're going to go skinny dipping in that whole scene. That's purely for the movie. In the original ending, when they're at Walt Disney's house, and and he's holding Roy Wally at gunpoint, in comes the girl in the Ferrari. She's Roy Wally's daughter. That's who she is.
Oh.
And so she actually was a person in the original version of the movie. So she shows up and she talks her father out of pressing charges against the Griswolds. And that's how they go home. They get off scot-free. So, they ditched that ending, but they kept the girl in the car.
Because
which is kind of interesting.
Christy Brinkley.
I mean, come on.
She's beautiful. Is that even
I want to buy a Ferrari now.
I do too. I want to wear white dresses and have blonde hair. And I mean, she was such a superstar. She was one of the biggest models of that time. She had a calendar.
Really huge. Oh, yeah. But she'd never been in a movie. She'd been in commercials, but she'd never been in a movie. And so another thing I thought was really funny about that they talked about in this documentary that I'm sure you saw was when there's quote unquote skinny dipping, she is not naked because she was although she was a model, like being a model one-on-one with a photographer is a totally different thing than being on a film set with all these guys on the crew. And so she was extremely uncomfortable. And she was like, I'm not getting naked in front of all of these people. So she has on like a little, she and Chevy Chase have like little flesh-colored under things that are hiding bits and pieces. Beverly D'Angelo, however.
No, she had no problem with it because she was in a Broadway production of Hair and used to do like
hundreds of
performances nude.
So she's like, okay, what day is Naked Day? All right, I'll be there. How many takes?
Michael Hall tried to sneak onto the set that day because he's 14. Once again, Beverly D'Angelo is so beautiful.
She's so pretty.
And so funny. I love the part of Randy Quaid when he's trying to kiss them goodbye and she's just ducking her head out.
It's one of those like background sight gags.
And every woman's been there.
Right? Oh my gosh.
They're just like, oh, no, Mr. Hansy, no. They changed this. And instead, we have Harold Ramis as the moose going, welcome to Wally World. And Chevy Chase punches the moose, which is a very funny, hilarious scene. John Candy shows up.
It's so great because, okay, it was so genius for them to decide we're going to totally change the end of the movie because it's an amazing, it's such a great payoff because as the audience, you have been through tragedy after tragedy. And as I said, because we're punching up here, you're laughing and laughing and laughing. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And but by the time they get to California, you're like, oh man, these poor people. Like by the time they've been through so much, you're finally rooting for them. And to have him punch the moose is so gratifying. And then, so as the audience, you're like, oh my gosh. And then who walks out? John Candy. John Candy. So you're like, no, there's so many more laughs here.
Will you listen to me? Let's just find a hotel. I'll call my parents. They'll wire us some money. We can fly home and forget this entire vacation ever happened.
Honey, just relax, okay? I told you I'm not angry anymore. I'm in complete control. I'm sure they're not repairing every ride at the same time. I think they owe us a little explanation. I think they owe us a little fun, okay? Whatever happens, just trust me. Will you just trust me? Huh, kids?
Sorry, folks, park's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
Yes, we're here to see Mr. Roy Wally.
What is your name, sir?
Clark W. Griswold.
What's this regarding, Mr. Grizzle?
We're here for public amusement relations, or a summer inspection to a personal matter. Inspection.
Well, nobody notified this office of anything.
Well, I'm notifying you.
I'm afraid I'm going to need a little more than that, sir.
Okie dokie. How's this?
Clark, have you lost your mind? Where did you get that?
Sporting goods store, honey. Now you listen to me. If you do what I say and there won't be any problem, okay? Okay. We just drove 2,460 miles just for a little Roy Wally entertainment. The moose says you're closed. I say you're open.
We're not really violent people. This is our first gun.
No, it isn't.
So the fact that they get what they want in the end isn't a letdown. It's hilarious because we've got John Candy at gunpoint. He is so funny. Every little moment of him is so.
He's another one.
The accent that he's doing.
What was he? 40?
Yeah, died way too. Oh, I don't remember.
Than that. Yeah. But he's the security guard, and he has to at gunpoint. He has to let them onto the So they're doing the rides together, and then Roy, whatever, he shows up, and then he's so taken by their story, like, oh my God, they came all this way, and they only want to do.
I love. They're commiserating. He's like, "Did you ever take your family on a long car trip?" He's like, "Oh boy, did I ever!" The smell, and he's like, "Oh, I know that smell." It's so
And
funny.
they kind of bond over that, and that's the story. Like they get their chance to have their day, and then they end it with all these pictures. They film this on the road in America the summer of 1982, and there were times where like people passed out from the heat. They had to. I mean, I'm sure it was like
Imogene Coca.
Imogene Coca had a stroke, and
she had a stroke. So frightening.
And they had to, and she had to remember lines that her husband had to run lines with her, but she had a stroke in the middle of rehearsal, and Harold Ramis said to her, "Okay, so we'll take a rest and we'll film that later." And she looked at him, she goes, "What are you talking about?" And they've been rehearsing.
Yeah, they've
for
been
a couple hours.
Yeah, they've been rehearsing this one scene over and over again, and he's like, "Okay, we got it. Let's film it." And she's like, "Film what?"
Right, she completely forgot.
But I mean, I guess they must have checked her out and decided that she was okay to go on. And like Margot said, like, so what does she do? She doesn't she's such a freaking pro. She all night long, she's just had a stroke. All night long, she's with her husband, like getting this scene down all over again that has just been wiped from her memory. And she shows up and like turns
Nails
it out.
it.
Amazing.
And I love Dana, the actress, Dana Barron. She said that Imogene was terrified of driving. And so when the cameras were on, like she would like hold the roof, or she'd be like on the floor when they went through the mountains, because the whole thing just terrified her.
And they must have been like, they were up on a rig, right? So they weren't even like driving on the road, which must have been even scarier.
I think so,
Yeah,
because you can't feel the wheels on the ground, right? So it's like they're in midair and they're in a trailer, and she just was not having it. It was very traumatizing for her, but it kind of bonded the crew as well. I mean, everybody just became really great friends, because you're constantly just having to deal with the weather and the situation that you're trying to film and just problem solve.
Oh, we forgot one more important character in this movie. Holiday Road. I loved this story. I didn't know this story. I mean, I knew it was Lindsey Buckingham.
Yes.
But apparently they knew, they were very smart. Very, very smart. Again, smart enough to go, okay, it's worth it. I know we sank a lot of money into the end of this movie, but we can't use it. Let's go back and, do a new ending. Which I'm sure must have been a very costly ending. They had to get Magic Mountain and ride all the rides, and John Candy, who wasn't cheap, but totally worth it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing they knew was we have to have the song. Like this has to have, they have to have a song that's their song. Like we know that things are progressing, like the good time song. That's the, the upbeat moments of the movie. It has to have this song. You know who we should get? We know who we totally need to do this song? Fleetwood Mac.
Right.
So Fleetwood Mac, for those of you who are not unfamiliar, first of all, they were like the super group of the era. Sure, I mean, if you can get Fleetwood Mac, why not? But one of the things about Fleetwood Mac that they're famous for is not getting along.
And breaking up.
And breaking up and getting back together and fighting,
yes.
Hooking up and breaking up. And so, unfortunately, this was a time when they were broken up. And so they talked to Lindsey Buckingham, who's the, critical member of Fleetwood Mac, and has a reputation for being a bit of a D word. And he's like, "Oh, you don't need Fleetwood Mac. You need me." Why are you even Fleetwood Mac? Who? Lindsay's here. Don't worry about it. I got it. I got the song. And
it's a great song.
It's a great song.
Stevie Nicks is recording her first solo album and is going to be like even more famous than she was. So I get it. He's competitive, and like they were all competitive with each other. They're songwriters. But it's like you said, it's when every time you hear, I don't get sick of it. which is amazing. There's like 4.
How do you not get sick of this song? But you don't. You don't get sick of this
not that
song.
many
It's
words.
an earworm.
Yes.
No, very few words. You walk out of the theater, everybody's singing the song. The whole week after you've seen the movie, it's like popping up. And when you're, in those little moments between your thoughts, there it is, Holiday Run. You don't get sick of it.
You don't. And
I don't get it.
And it's like, because I think it reminds me of the movie. Like, I'm just thinking of like.
No, I think Lindsay made some kind of a deal with the devil. You're going to have a song that everyone is going to know and everyone is going to sing. They're never going to get sick of it. I don't know what he exchanged for that.
With the talent of the guitar playing, which is phenomenal.
It's super good.
He's really good.
It's a super good song. This is a movie about D words who deliver.
Yes. You know what? Yeah, this is why they are famous. This is why they did make a lot of money. They do have some talent, and when you're pushed to, and Chevy Chase has to carry the whole thing. Like, it is on his back.
It really is.
And you have to like Clark. And
you
Clark
have to be
idiot.
on Clark's side,
Right.
who is a total moron. And again, just like Russ, you're watching him get fleeced and taken advantage of and making bad decisions to try to look like a big man that he's not. And yet, obviously, he's successful, in his career because he has a big, massive house and, he can afford this vacation and he doesn't mind, he gets fleeced for $500 here and there and everywhere. And he's just like, ugh. Another $500. He's not worried about it, really. I love the scene. There's so many scenes, but yeah, that character is so, the commitment to that character is so great that it carries you through the whole film. I love the scene where he's being such a jerk to that bartender in Dodge City.
Hey, knucklehead.
Look at me.
And he gets shot. Chevy Chase, who's very tall, very handsome. He's usually suave in the movies, or he definitely was on Saturday Night Live. He tended to be, I'm Chevy Chase and you're not, to be this doofus and really commit to that. And, but you get it now why Beverly D'Angelo loves him, because he does make the effort. He really wants things to be great.
He does.
He's imaginative. He wants to have fun. He really wants to have fun. He works hard. He plays hard. So, you kind of... but when he has his blow-ups, it totally makes sense. I love it when he's out in the desert and he just has the pants around his head.
My gosh, that whole scene where he's wandering in the desert is hilarious. And it's just him. Yeah. It's just him. It's great. And we could be here all day. There's so many moments. Cameo. I think when they're going to the place where it's earlier in the movie, they're going to the place where they're like renting little cabins, and the guy that runs it is Bill Murray's brother, whose name I can never remember. Brian Doyle Murray, who also plays Clark's boss in Christmas Vacation.
And screws him.
Yeah. So he's playing this like hillbilly hotel guy, but then he also is playing the CEO corporate guy. Underrated. Yes. That's all I'm saying.
It's filled with really great people, and the soundtrack is really fun. It was a big hit. And it's one of those, it was on TV so much too, because it's pretty innocent, except for like when you get the real version, you're like, oh, they're dropping a lot of F-bombs in this thing.
I know, I forgot how many F-bombs and boobs there were.
Yeah.
There's not that many. It's just Beverly D'Angelo. But more than you would see on television. You get used to seeing the TV version with the dubbing and maybe those little bits cut, or they crop it somehow so you don't see the boobs.
Right.
But it's still pretty tame.
I think so,
for as
too.
Edgy as it is.
Yeah.
With the dog and the corpse and
all of that stuff. Audrey's cousin, Jane Krakowski. All of it. People are just really committed and they're doing their best work, and it's super fun. It just delivers. Everything it's supposed to do, it delivers. That's what's great about it.
Yeah. Randy Quaid is so great in this movie that in all of the subsequent movies, you're just waiting for Randy Quaid to show up.
With the white shoes.
You just can't wait for him to show up. When is he getting here?
Yes. The white patent leather shoes that he gives him. it's just brilliant.
Oh, and my kids didn't understand why those shoes were gauche, because like Bruno Mars wears shoes like that.
Yeah.
Like, no, you need to understand. Oh, and the designer jeans.
The Sassoon jeans that she had.
They both have.
Yeah.
They both are wearing matching designer jeans. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
But that wasn't a thing we laughed at in 1983. That was like what you wear.
But yeah, that's exactly. I think they look great. But it's hard to say. I mean, and I really enjoyed reading it, and I love John Hughes, and I like a lot.
It's really good.
It's
really
great
good.
writing. It's really
please
smart.
It's so easy to get a hold of it. I will put that audio version because this English teacher, this is super good. It bears reading out loud. Like it's sort of like Christmas Carol. Like you want to read it out loud, except for those very cringy bits, which, just warning.
Yeah.
There's some really bad, especially this Native American racist tropes. I mean, I don't know what else to call them. The writing is super good. It's really good writing.
And the movie's funny, and it just delivers.
It just is.
And you don't.
It's
like
so
I don't
brilliant.
check my phone. Like I'm just. I'm completely consumed with the story as they're
because there's so many things going on. There's so many layers of jokes, and that's the other cool thing. And I think why we love it so much is there are so many layers of, there's verbal gags, there's visual gags, there's things going on in the background that you are, if you're paying attention to the verbal gag, you're going to miss. So it bears watching over and over and over again. And you're going to see things that each time that you didn't notice, like the plate thing. Like
right.
how many times have I seen this movie? I never noticed until last night that he is putting dirty plates back in the cabinet.
It's great. I mean, I'm going to say movie. I think just.
Oh yeah.
It's a classic.
Oh yeah. It is.
Up and it
does.
And Chevy Chase, if you've wondered why, like, he was a big deal, I think this is one of his best performances.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, definitely. Without question. We did Fletch a long time ago. And that is very good too. He's very good in that too. But I agree. Like this role in particular, this movie, the first one, the range that he has, of being like I said, being such a jerk to that bartender, being such a stupid guy, like when he gets in the thing with the skinny dipping with the girl in the Ferrari, but also like genuinely caring about his family, but then being driven to just abandon a corpse in the rain on a Porsche.
I like him. Like, let's look at the Grand Canyon. Aren't we going to look at it? He goes, okay.
It's like,
all right,
let's go. Oh yeah, and that's in the story too. When he robs the motel owner, that's in the story. And they are on the run from the law. So, I mean, but I agree. Movie, of course, movie, and all the sights, like just the road trip majesty of the U.S. Freeway system it never looked better.
And it's a beautiful country, I have to say. Like it
looks good.
It really looks great. I mean, yeah, I'm sure. And they always talk about, oh God, it was so hot. We were so tired.
Oh my gosh, when they're in Arizona. Oh yeah. Oh, when Ellen says, I mean, so many of the stuff is, like I said, it's straight out of the story. When Ellen says to Aunt, what's her name? The aunt, Imogen Coca. When she says, like, get in that car, or I'm going to split your lip. That's in the story.
She's Aunt Edna.
Aunt Edna.
She's
I wanted to say
aunt.
Edith. Edna.
Yeah. It works.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. No notes. It's perfect.
Yeah. What are we doing next, Margot?
I know. We've had some really awesome suggestions in the Facebook group lately. I could do Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
I think that'll be fun. That seems like a summer movie, right?
Yeah.
Angela Lansbury, right?
Is Angela Lansbury in it? I know Dick Van Dyke is in it. I'm not sure Angela Lansbury is in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Is she? I haven't seen it in so many years. 1968. No, she is not. Sally Ann Howes, that is the female lead. But Benny Hill, remember? That'll be fun. Let's do that.
That'll be really fun. Okay, cool. So we'll do that next. Please feel free, send us your suggestions, all those places we mentioned before. That would be amazing. If you like what you hear, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, that would be totally amazing as well. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick on Twitter and Instagram. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We're going to load up the station wagon. We're going to play Holiday Road on our way out. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book versus Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.